Season 10 of South Park was by far one of my favorite seasons out of the entire series. There were so many iconic episodes that came out of this season that so many fans would talk about to this day. From the return of Chef to Man Bear Pig to the critically acclaimed episode Make Love Not Warcraft. And while it would be really hard for me to narrow down what was the true highlight of the season, if I had to give an answer, I would probably say it would come down to the Season 10 two-part special Cartoon Wars. This two-part special is legendary for a couple reasons, one of them being that it sparked a real-life conversation around censorship and how far we should allow other people to bully us into it. And the second and probably more well-known reason, the reason you probably clicked on this video, is because this was infamously the special where South Park would go toe-to-toe with Family Guy, calling out its jokes and its writing staff, which would honestly have a real domino effect, changing how people viewed Family Guy as a series going forward. And seeing as I just finished rewatching both of these episodes last night, I thought it'd be cool to do a deep dive into what this special was about, why it was so cool, and what we could ultimately take away from it. So without any further delays, let's take a look at the time South Park called out Family Guy. So depending on if you're an OG South Park fan who's been watching since the 90s, a more modern fan like me who's been watching since the 2010s, or if you're just getting into South Park and don't know too much about the lore, you might not even know that number 1, Cartoon Wars was a part of Season 10, or number 2, that the special even exists. Because if you try to look up these two episodes on any of the major streaming sites that have South Park on them, you're not going to find them. And that's because both Cartoon Wars Part 1 and Part 2 are 2 of the 6 banned South Park episodes in history. Like for real, you don't understand how hard it was to find these 2 episodes. I had to sail up and down the high seas just to find both episodes in HD. And do you know how crazy it is that as controversial as South Park is, as long as it's been running and with 328 episodes, only 6 episodes in history have been banned? And what's even funnier is that 5 out of the 6 have all been banned for the same reason. But I know you're probably saying, well, if this special was so controversial that it's banned from airing, what was actually in it? Well, the special starts off with Randy smashing in the Stan's room in typical Randy fashion as he freaks out, waking everybody up, telling them that they gotta go in to grab emergency supplies. We then see that everybody in the town of South Park is freaking out, running around, and it's pure chaos. And this just has to be said, Butters has the worst parents on the entire planet.
Oh my god, Steven, we've left Butters!
We can't go back out there, Linda. It's too late for him.
The boys then ask Randy what's wrong and why everybody's such in a panic, and Randy explains that a cartoon's about to air showing an image of the Muslim prophet Muhammad, which if y'all didn't know, if you're not very religious, that's not really something you're supposed to do. They then ask what cartoon's gonna air the episode of Muhammad, and surprise surprise, it's Family Guy. And I find it absolutely hilarious that Randy described Family Guy as that cartoon that's always pushing people's buttons and has toilet bowl humor. But we'll get more into Family Guy later. Stan then asks all the adults if they really think anybody's gonna be that mad that they show Muhammad in a cartoon, but then we cut to a news report of people rioting, burning American flags, and just a bunch of chaos in response to the potential of the episode. Everybody then agrees to wait till the morning to see what happens, and we get one of my favorite Randy quotes out of the entire series.
If we're still alive in the morning, then we'll know we're not dead.
Everybody wakes up in the morning and they're surprised to see that they're all still alive. That's when it's revealed that Fox News actually censored the image of Muhammad at the last minute. This is also the first time we get to see the Family Guy characters in their parody forms, and I'm not gonna lie, I found this so hilarious my first time watching this. The boys end up watching the Muhammad episode, and while Stan, Kenny, and Kyle don't really see anything wrong with it, Cartman starts to flip out. He starts to go on and on about how insensitive Family Guy is and how they just mocked an entire religion of people and how uncool the episode was. Which, I mean, I'm not saying he's right or wrong, but do we know what character we're talking about here? Like, this is really ironic. If I put all of Cartman's worst moments in this video, it's definitely getting demonetized. I might not even be able to upload the video. Genuinely, after all the things that Cartman has done leading up until this point into the series, I don't even understand how the boys could take him serious and not bust out laughing. But after Cartman storms out, Kyle's mom and dad walks in, and Kyle's mom starts to freak out when she realizes that 3 boys are watching Family Guy. Kyle's dad then takes a baseball bat and then just starts smashing the TV, which, you know, I don't know, man. Is every adult in South Park just filled with stupid? Like, this is their TV. Why would they smash it? Are you not going to use it later? I just like to imagine in my head that Kyle's dad is sitting at dinner later that night and thinking to himself, Man, I really shouldn't have smashed that TV. But when Kyle tries to defend the Family Guy episode saying that it really wasn't anything that serious, Kyle's mom begins to flip out saying that the boys need to take Muslim sensitivity training. And once again, the irony that Mr. Garrison is teaching this, like, where is PC principal when you need him? But fast forward again in the episode and all the students are called to the gym for an emergency. It's then revealed that the Family Guy episode featuring Muhammad was the first of a two-part special. And after Fox News censored the first episode, the Family Guy writing staff demanded that Muhammad be shown in the second episode. And once again, everybody in South Park begins to freak out. Fast forward again, and Cartman, who is still highly against Muhammad being shown, tells the boys that they need to do something. That's when he suggests that they ride their big wheels all the way from South Park to Los Angeles to stop the episode from airing themselves. And if I'm being honest, I have never understood how Cartman has struggled to lose weight in other episodes when in episodes like this, he is suggesting driving miles and miles on a bike. But Kyle turns down Cartman's idea, saying that it's a good thing that the Family Guy writing staff is still airing the episode the way they want to because they're not bending the knee to intimidation. But Cartman tells Kyle that intimidation isn't what's important. What's important is the possibility that people can be hurt, and if 100 people are hurt because Family Guy wanted to make a joke, is the joke still going to be funny in the end? And this is actually a very real life concept that the South Park creators Matt and Trey were going through while they were airing Cartoon Wars. Because back in season 5, South Park would air the episode Super Best Friends, and in that episode they would actually show a cartoon depiction of Muhammad. Now I don't know if people just missed it or they weren't paying attention, but when this episode aired, it really didn't cause that much of a controversy, and it wouldn't be until years later that the episode would actually cause outrage with Muslim groups, leading to the episode getting banned. So when Matt and Trey were doing Cartoon Wars, they wanted to show a depiction of Muhammad, to which Comedy Central told them no, not only because they feared for the lives of Matt and Trey, but also for the lives of the employees working at Comedy Central. But in the eyes of Matt and Trey, this was them giving in to intimidation and terrorism, because like they've said so many times, they believe it has to all be okay or none of it's okay.
If you don't already know, Matt Stone and Trey Parker, the creators of South Park, have depicted Mohammed again in a new episode. They have received death threats from radical Muslims. Now, the people who are threatening them have said that they don't think it's a death threat, they think it's a warning. They warned that if they carried on like this, they would be murdered. On top of this, they posted Matt Stone and Trey Parker's addresses on their website. That is not a warning. In doing that, they are facilitating an attack. So it isn't a warning, that's crap. It's a threat that they clearly advocate being carried out.
Are you afraid that if the network allows you to unveil the Prophet Muhammad, that you will be bombed?
We'd be so hypocritical against our own our own thoughts if we said, okay, well, let's not make fun of them because they might hurt us. Like, that's messed up to have that kind of thought process, you know. Okay, well, we'll rip on the Catholics because they won't hurt us, but we won't rip on them because they might hurt us. Like, that is not the way it works.
So this conversation between Cartman and Kyle is actually a really interesting one about forced censorship. Should you censor yourself if there's a chance that you or the people around you could end up getting hurt? Or should you stand your ground? And with Kyle imagining what can happen if violence is carried out, he agrees to go along with Cartman to stop the episode from airing. Fast forward again in the episode, and all the adults in South Park have came together to come up with a plan to combat the Family Guy episode. And the big brain idea that they come up with is to literally stick their heads in the ground and bury their heads in the sand, because that way they didn't see the episode, they didn't hear the episode, and they didn't talk about the episode. Which is another social criticism by Matt and Trey about how people and networks will blindly ignore radical threats in the name of censorship, and how rather than different groups of people come together to combat it, they would, for lack of a better words, rather stick their heads in the ground and ignore it. Back to Cartman and Kyle. Kyle starts to talk about how long it's going to take for them to actually get to Los Angeles, and in the midst of talking, Cartman accidentally reveals that he plans on trying to get Family Guy off the network for good. Kyle, who only thought that they were trying to get the Muhammad episode pulled, begins to confront Cartman. He says that he likes Family Guy and he doesn't want to see it get pulled off the network, and he questions Cartman about why he doesn't like Family Guy, saying that they have the same sense of humor. And Cartman begins to flip out.
I am nothing like Family Guy. When I make jokes, they are inherent to a story. Deep, situational, and emotional jokes based on what is relevant and has a point. Not just one random interchangeable joke after another.
Now, if you haven't caught on yet, Matt and Trey hate Family Guy, and it's not even a small hatred, it is a long and well documented one. They believe that Family Guy's infamous cutaway jokes are just lazy writing. To them, they believe that jokes should be done based on what's going on in the episode. And since Family Guy likes to do a different format, Matt and Trey have vocally said that they don't respect Family Guy's writing.
It's about, going, do you really not like Family Guy, or are you? And yeah. I just want to say for the record right now, like, we've seen Family Guy. It's we do hate it. We do hate Family Guy, and And it's just a person, and we totally understand that people love it, and that's why we put it in the show. We understand that it speaks to some people, and it's like it can just be a simple laugh, and that's great. And we certainly don't think it should be taken off the air or anything like that. We just don't respect it in terms of writing. That's probably the best way to put it.
That's a good way to put it, yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Because, there's basically, we always try to avoid, there's one thing we always try to avoid in South Park is gags. We hate gags. And so whenever we're bringing in new writers, we always know the gaggy writers, right? Which are the ones that no matter what you're talking about and how deep of an issue or whatever character arc or whatever it is, they're just throwing out a gag. And it's just like, yeah, and then he says this. And it's like, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. That has nothing to do with that character. You're just throwing out a gag randomly. And it seems like Family Guy is basically just gags.
I think what makes me disappointed about Family Guy is I think it could be an amazing show. I think you can tell they're smart people working on it. But I think they've just kind of gone for...
I don't think they work hard enough.
Yeah, they need to work harder.
Kyle then tries to stop Cartman from pulling the episode by chasing him on his big wheel, but eventually Cartman's able to ditch him. Fast forward again in the episode, and we actually see an episode of Terrence and Phillip playing, and for some reason they're doing a special episode featuring Muhammad. We then see them storm the president's office after they find out that their episode with Muhammad was censored, but the president tells them it's too dangerous and that he's not going to endanger the lives of everybody working at the company just to show him. And when Terrence and Phillip try to bring up the fact that Family Guy is supposed to be airing an episode showing Muhammad, the president says that he doubts that the episode's actually going to air and that somebody's probably on their way right now to get it pulled. We then cut to Cartman at the lobby of Fox Studios, and he pleads his case to the receptionist on why he needs to get the Family Guy episode pulled, but she just redirects him to the lobby, which is honestly what anyone else would have did. And who does Cartman meet in the lobby? None other than Bart Simpson, who is also trying to get Family Guy pulled off the air. Cartman then talks to Bart about how much he doesn't like Family Guy and then asks him what's his actual plan to try to get the show off the network, to which he doesn't really have one. That's when Cartman explains to him that if he could get one episode pulled because it's offensive to one group, then any group can get an episode pulled because it'll be offensive, saying that he's gonna use fear to get them to do what he wants. And I love this scene where Bart asks him, isn't that like terrorism? And Cartman says, it isn't like terrorism, it is terrorism. I also love the part where Bart tries to convince Cartman that he's a better kid than him and all Cartman has to do is bring up the Scott Tinnerman incident. Like there was no way Bart was gonna win this. But fast forward again in the episode and Cartman's talking to the Fox executives, pleading his case on why the episode shouldn't go on air, claiming that he's a victim of terrorism and that he doesn't want to see anyone else get hurt. And I don't know why, but without any questions, they just believe him. But they tell Cartman if they pull the episode, then the Family Guy writing staff will refuse to work going forward. And they ask Cartman if he could talk to the writing staff and try to convince them. Fast forward again and Kyle caught a ride to Fox Studios. And the guy that drove Kyle told him that he hopes he succeeds. He says that he likes Family Guy, and even though it may be simple at times, he likes that it doesn't get all preachy on him with his messages. And I think that might have been Matt and Trey trying to acknowledge one reason why they think people might like Family Guy. Because even though they might feel the opposite way about it, that doesn't mean that their opinion is the objectively right one. Kyle then runs into Bart asking him if he knows where the network president's office is so that he can try to stop Cartman, but Bart leads him to a janitor's closet and then knocks him out. We then cut back to Cartman, who just learned the shocking secret that the Family Guy writing staff is actually a bunch of manatees. It's then explained that the manatees grab a ball that has a verb, noun, or a pop culture reference on it, and that's how Family Guy's jokes are written. It's also explained that when the Muhammad ball was pulled out, all the manatees stopped working because manatees believe that either everything is okay or nothing's okay. So maybe Matt and Trey might be part manatee, who knows? Cartman then tries to get the manatees to sympathize with him with his sob story, but they're animals, so they don't even take him serious. They're not even listening to him. We then cut to Cartman, who arrived where Bart's keeping Kyle captive, and he explains that while his first plan may have failed, he has a new idea on how to stop the Family Guy episode from airing. He's going to steal an idea ball, to which his plan actually works. But Kyle then gets free after giving Bart one of his speeches, and him and Cartman begin to fight all throughout Fox Studios. But Kyle then breaks free, eventually making it to the president's office. He pleads with the president not to pull the episode because if one episode can be pulled for one reason, then every episode can be pulled for another. Eventually though, the president agrees to air the Family Guy episode episode with Muhammad uncensored. But the funny thing is, when they actually played the Family Guy episode, the entire section with Muhammad is actually censored. You only get a slide describing what's going on, and then another slide saying that Comedy Central has refused to broadcast an image of Muhammad on their network. So I guess you could say in the end, censorship won. But I really thought this special was an interesting take on censorship and the two different roads that it can lead to. Because there are pros and cons on both sides, and everything isn't just black and white. But like I said before, while there was the Muhammad controversy around this special, that's not really what most people remember this special for. Most people ultimately remembered it as the time that South Park called out Family Guy. And while many people had different reactions to the special, probably the funniest reactions had to come from the industry itself.
What's that? What else happened in this episode? This is part 2.
Well, what happens, a big thing that happens is that Cartman goes and meets Bart Simpson, and we know a lot of people at The Simpsons, and The Simpsons is a show we respect very, very much. But it was pretty great because after this episode aired, actually, no, it was after the first episode aired, so this was the second part, but after the first part aired, we got calls from people at The Simpsons saying thank you, because they actually hate Family Guy more than we do, even though they won't say it. And then we got calls from people that work on King of the Hill saying, they said, quote, "You're doing God's work by ripping on Family Guy." And because Family Guy is kind of this, it's like the Justin Timberlake thing. It's like when you're a musician and you're doing your stuff and you're working hard and you're trying to do art, and then Justin Timberlake comes along and just rakes in all the cash and everyone thinks he's awesome. You're like, dude, come on, that's not that good. But that's how sort of everyone in this town feels about Family Guy. And again, it is like this childish jealousy too, because it's like, come on, our stuff's cooler.
Yeah,
but
it totally is childish because Family Guy gets like 4 times the ratings of us.
So Simpsons people are really upset, but they were so happy about this episode that then, after we had talked to them, we're like, okay, well let's have Bart feel the same way that Cartman feels, and we'll just have Cartman meet Bart, and then we'll put in the King of the Hill staff in there too, just for fun. Yeah. And so it was really like there was this very animation solidarity moment where everyone did come together over hatred for Family Guy.
Which is such a wild concept to me. Like, I can't imagine people in my industry coming together just celebrating how much they hate me. And you would think Family Guy creator Seth MacFarlane would feel some type of way about this, but honestly, it didn't really seem like he cared that much.
The Simpsons took a few shots at us and we lobbed one back. Really, Matt Groening is a friend of mine. I have nothing but warm feelings about that show.
What about South Park?
They can go to hell.
The two guys that Trey Parker, Matt Stone, who do South Park, they hate you, right?
They seem to, yeah.
Now, why do they hate you? Do you know them personally?
I don't know them. I've met Trey maybe once or twice for all of 5 minutes at.
And when you see him, what goes down? Does he spit on you? Does he smack you? Does he bitch slap you? What? I mean, is it physical at all?
No, it's a very cordial. Like when Churchill and Hitler would, be in the same room together.
But what happens? So then when you see each other, but he says horrible things about you. I don't know if you say horrible things about him, do you?
I try not to.
But you get caught up in it. What is it they resent about you, and will this ever be resolved? And why don't you, when you see him, say, "Hey, Trey, what's the deal? Why are you so hostile?"
Because we take so many shits on so many people, it would make me the biggest fucking hypocrite in the world.
Right.
I think what their beef is more with they don't like the way the show is set up. It's the cutaways specifically that they really, I guess, don't think are they don't see that as a legitimate form of comedy and
the cutaways.
Yeah.
What do you mean by cutaways?
Well, the flashbacks, the kind of quick pops on Family Guy, and the way.
What do you mean that's not legitimate? You mean a cutaway is not legitimate to them?
Their whole thing is, well, it detracts from the story. It doesn't.
Why do they care?
Well,
why should
I don't
they
know.
care?
It seems like there are maybe. I don't know why they care so much. I don't know. I thought it was just on something that they. Because the two-parter that they did about us was very funny, and they. But then I read this article where they were just really like spitting venom at us and at our staff, and I was like, "Oh, that's kind of lame." It's like, go after me all you want, but don't go picking on writers you don't even know who are making much less money than you.
What do they think it is? Like it's easy? It's an easy joke or something?
They do think it's an easy joke, and it's funny. Those are the hardest things to write in the world because they're like little animated one-frame Far Side cartoons, and you're coming up with a premise that has to be set up and pay off in a short amount of time. You're just starting from scratch.
So their point of view, if we can understand it, is that you're not getting laughs in the proper way. Laughs are great, but you're getting
that is all
that is exactly it.
Now, Sam,
and honestly, I understand both sides of the spectrum. Like, I don't think either side is objectively right or wrong, because as someone who watches South Park but not necessarily Family Guy, I don't necessarily find Family Guy funny, but I would never tell anybody who watches Family Guy or really enjoys it that it's not funny because I don't think it's funny or because I don't like the style of comedy. Rather, it's just not funny to me. But I do think Cartoon Wars was a great special, and it opened up some really interesting conversations. But let me know in the comments what you thought about this South Park special. Did they hit the nail on the head when it came to Family Guy, or did they get it completely wrong? Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the noti bell to be notified when I upload my next video. And until then, it's been your boy Corn XV, and I'm off this.
Pull up in Rovers, it's over. Bitch, I'm cheese sauce.